Rainbow Factory.
Now, that's a rainbow's tale isn't quite as nice as the story we knew of sugar and spice. There's long been rumors as to how exactly rainbows are made in Equestria, while a great amount of Pegasi ponies are employed in the rainbow department of the weather factory. Almost all of them due to low-end work. What's known as the great streams of spectra, the individual colors of the rainbow flow through large grates and into vast vats. From there, workers carefully and equally mix the spectra into the coagulated rainbow pools that dot and run through the factory and the surrounding city. Next, the mixture is pumped to the floor below, where other employees atomize it and store it until the active weather Pegasi deploy it in the field. However, no one knows how individual spectra is made. Supplies are never seen being brought in, leaving not even a clue what goes into a rainbow. Tourists, when visiting the factory, are treated to an extremely foreboding and plain wall, with massive solid doors bearing entry to any pony at any time. On most of the facility's various signs and architectures bubbly and welcoming. The Rainbow Factory's upper floor was protected by harsh imagery of potential hazards and death, and the cloud wall was made not out of the clean white of the rest of the city, but of a black, quietly thundering fog. To become an employee of the Upper Rainbow Factory meant sacrificing any life outside those black walls. Workers are sworn to secrecy and forbidden from leaving, and live inside the facility itself. Those few who ever manage to make it out, not in a body bag, were twisted and disturbed, too damaged to ever bring themselves to talk about it. A lot of theories were proposed: dark magic from captured unicorns, chemicals, environmental hazards that no sane pony would tolerate, and even thoughts of another unknown sister of Celestia's destined to create the spectra instead of raising the sun and or the moon. None of them could be farther than the truth. But a rainbow's easy once you get to know it with the help of the magic of a Pegasus device.
Come on, Orion. We're gonna be late for our final test.
Scootaloo called to a friend of hers. She was older now, in her last year of flight school. She, like any other Pegasus in the school, was terribly nervous about the final test. Those that passed were granted freedom into the world to find their cutie marks if they haven't yet, and become working ponies. Little is known, or at least little thought about the fact, was of what happened to the fillies that failed their test. While uncommon, one or two from every class generally didn't have it in them to perform the rigorous acts and maneuvers. Those that failed their tests were looked down upon in the worst ways, shunned and hated. Cloudsdale had always bred a form of nationalism amongst its occupants. If you weren't the best, or didn't show the potential of being the greatest, you weren't allowed to be part of the glorious collective. Skulu moved a little to the side as Orion, a tall yet fairly skinny pony, settled next to her. He fluffed its light brown feathers and gave a worried attempt at a smile as she stared around where he sat. They were sitting in a large open waiting room overlooking the Colosseum with all the other graduating Pegasi. Just visible in the distance was the factory. Orion glanced at it and gulped.
What's the matter, Ryan? You afraid of getting a dead-end job on a snow line?
Orion chuckled a bit, then closed his eyes and sighed. No, it's just, I don't know. I don't think I can do this. What if I fail? What if I don't fail? But dude, just as bad enough to be disliked by everyone. I don't know if I can take being deported. Where do we even go anyways? Scootaloo gave Orion a friendly punch.
No one knows you don't. We're not going to fail. Everyone here is gonna be fine. I know I will at least pass.
She laughed.
Thanks to the tips from Rainbow Dash, I'm sure to be fine.
Oh yeah, sure, that reassures me.
It's always just as, if not even more reassuring than a psychopathic hate every pony here seems to love the spread. Quit panicking, scaredy wings.
Scootaloo replied.
The only one here I think even might fail is that yellow pony in a dark green mane. She's the one who was out sick for that month, you know?
Oh yeah. Orion remembered as he craned his head into the other pony's direction.
The one who had that bad case of hoof and wing. She looks pretty confident, though. I suppose we'll see.
Scootaloo trailed, turned to look at the factory herself. It gave her chills, not of fear, but pride.
I hope I get some cool active weather job. Can you imagine it? Everyone in Ponyville or Philadelphia staring up at me going, there goes Scootaloo, such an amazing flyer. And from Cloudsdale, there can be no doubt.
She smiled in excitement, forgetting her tension for the moment. That would be something, I'll admit. Mind you, just coming from Cloudsdale. It wouldn't be an honor.
Exactly. Raise the flag.
Raise the flag. Places every pony. A massive buff Pegasus walked towards the entrance to the Coliseum. We're going to do this by name. You're adjudicators on each side of the field. Do not, I repeat, do not fly too far west. If they lose sight of you for any reason, you will be failed immediately. Take deep breaths, stretch your wings one last time. The test will consist of 3 sections: weather clearing, agility, and finally, recovery. Clear the clouds, fly through the hoops, and then fly to the mark evaluation. Close your wings for at least 3 seconds. Any less, and you'll fail. But keep in mind, there's no extra points for extra sections. Finally, recover before you hit the cloud 4. Understood? Any questions? The instructor paused and carefully glanced at each pony in the room. Everyone's eyes was completely focused on him, and none were seized with confusion. Alright, Auradon, you're up first. Clear, fly, fall, complete. The yellow pony nodded and walked quickly up to the starting ramp with purpose. She stared at the watching judges, waited for a nod from all 3, and then took off with powerful force. The ramp bounced slightly from the force of the takeoff. Every pony watches Aurora quickly reach the starting altitude and then began a direct purposeful attack on the positioned clouds. With expert timing and intelligent angles, the sky was soon empty of any moisture. Scootaloo and Orion watched with open mouths. as they watched the first testee pull off fast and tight turns, expertly shooting dead center through each and every hoop. Finally, Aurora pulled herself up to the proper altitude, hovered, and closed her wings. The group of students gasped as she started plummeting down towards the clouds and counted breathlessly. 1, 2, 3. They sighed as they watched her wings open in the correct amount of time, collectively holding that relief. Suddenly, Aura's wings whipped upwards, and the group of students flinched in horror as they all heard a loud, hollow snap, only to be suddenly replaced by an unending, piercing scream. Many, like Orion, shielded their eyes with their wings, as others, like Scootaloo, could only watch, terrified, as the blur of yellow, green, and red plummeted into the ground with a dull thump. Wasting no time, the instructor walked forwards again as the three judges simply pointed down and started shuffling papers around. Speaking loudly, as if nothing had happened, he called out again. Gacy Fields, clear, fly, fall, complete. Scootaloo and Orion stared, slack-jawed, as another pony gulped, then walked forwards onto the path and took off. They took back to the tuft of the cloud where Aurora had landed and stared. As the wind blew the fragments that were thrown out from the collision away, they saw the shivering yellow body attempted to move, only to collapse with a cry. 4-day spot, clear, fly, fall, complete. Aurora still struggled to walk, wailing with every step. Her legs weren't broken. She could use them fine, but it was obvious the pain from her wing joints and the loss of her potential life was crushing her. Scootaloo felt Orion shuffle uneasily, tears welling in his eyes as a frown formed on his face. Holiday shot, clear, fall, complete.
No one is coming to help.
Orion seethed through closed teeth. Scootaloo felt extremely sad for the yellow Pegasus, but couldn't see herself helping her. She would be failed herself and sent away, far away, from Cloudsdale and any familiar place on Equestria, to a place where she and any other failed students could never stain Cloudsdale reputation. It was a terrible shame, but Scootaloo couldn't fail herself. She couldn't fail her friends. She definitely couldn't fail Rainbow Dash. Not after the care and help she had given her Scootaloo's whole life. Scootaloo blinked the tears from her eyes and forced herself to watch the competing students. One after another took off, successfully passed the test, and flew to the east gate. Other judges spot in the stands. That's all Scootaloo focused on. Pass the test, fly to the gate. Live a happier life. Orion Solstice. Clear, fly, fall, complete.
Now,
What? The instructor took a step back, one leg left raised in the air. You catch for future flight test. Get out of here before you piss the judges off.
no, don't even pretend you care about the future if you don't care about hers.
Orion defied, unsure about himself.
You say you want me to have a good life, and yet you let those that fail suffer unbearable pain.
Get the fuck onto the field before I fail you myself. The instructor shouted menacingly.
Fine.
Orion spoke sharply before walking onto the ramp. He stared at the judges, waited for individual nods, and the second they came, he took off. However long before starting altitude, he turned sharply and landed gently next to Aurora. She turned and looked at him, blood running down her forehead and sides, and tears streamed down her face.
What are you doing? You'll feel like me. You'll be exiled.
I'd rather be exiled from a place that treats ponies like this than live my life while others don't live theirs. Aurora smiled, happiness briefly replacing her sadness and her blackened, puffy eyes. Until she stumbled again and intense pain flashed across her body. Orion leaned in close, using his wings to brace the yellow pony against himself. He stared up at the judges, beaming hate with his vision. He stared down, unaffected, and simply pointed down, before looking back towards the ramp for the next contestant. Scootaloo looked shocked, hardly hearing her name. She moved numbly up the ramp, never taking her eyes off her friend, and the pony who sacrificed himself to help. After a brief moment, she shook her head, recovered her thoughts, and looked up to the judges. Thoughts passed down through her head as she watched them all nod.
Oh, Celestia, what do? I can't let everyone I know down. But I'll never see Orion again. I suppose. I hope he knew that rest when he did that. I'm sure he's thinking the same right now.
She glanced at Orion. He wasn't looking at her. She took off, heartbroken. Instinct kicked in as the familiar rush of wind cooled her and blew her thoughts away. She stopped at the right altitude and then launched again, sensing and seeing every cloud, formulating a game plan. In a matter of a couple dozen seconds, the sky was cleared. She did a quick loop in mid-flight, aiming at the first loop. With a power flash of her wings, she propelled forward through the first ring, and then the second and the third, expertly turning and drifting. She curved in towards the second last ring, near the bottom of the field. As she descended, she caught sight of Orion and Aurora, almost at the west gates now. Orion turned his head and smiled weakly. Scootaloo's focus shattered. Orion knew what he did. He cared about her. He missed her. And he never got to say goodbye. Scootaloo cracked into the bottom part of the ring, falling backwards several feet and hitting the ground. The sudden intense flash of fear, she flipped herself onto her feet and began flapping her wings. Levitating off the ground, maybe that didn't count as a failure, she thought. I can still fly. There was a distraction on the field. She spun around to the judges, 3 hooves pointed down. Scootaloo started crying there, tears welling up and blurring her vision. This wasn't right. This shouldn't have happened. None of it. Orion should have passed his test and cheered her on from the east gate. She shouldn't have looked at him. She should have focused on flying. There was no room for excuses. Defeated, she slowly hovered towards Orion and settled down next to him. She looked at him with her purple eyes. He looked back, offering a smile. You did a good job. Scootaloo dropped her head and sobbed. She then walked around Orion, lifted her wing on her own, and helped Aurora walk to the east gate. Before them stood a long, unlit hall with only a cheap sign stuck to the wall notifying test failures to proceed down the hall. They waited only briefly to gather themselves and prepare for where they would be taken, and then all stepped forward together. Let's delve deeper into rainbow philosophy, far beyond of Cloudsdale's mythology. Seizing this judge the floating city, with its alluring decor and social psychology. Against the empty carriage at the end of the lonely hall were 3 imposing ponies, leaning in a disinterested and bored pose. One of them happened to look up as the sorry-looking trio stumbled out into the open. They were on the bottom edge of the Colosseum, with vast rolling hills and plains of Equestria visible far below.
Hagebrush, you got some of them worthless Pegasus.
The first one he called to an even bigger pony on the other side of the carriage.
I suppose it's the get to work time, is it?
Cool it, hot shot. There may be money, be more too.
No, I was the no, I was the last student to go.
Scootaloo spoke in sobs. Orion could only hang his head.
It's.
She paused and breathed deeply, determined to remain as strong as she could.
It's just us three. Aurora's wings, they're broken. She needs help. Instead, just a crying shame, is it? Was it to us? All the better she don't come flying back to us no more. We may have failed our damn tests, but that doesn't mean we're not worth keeping alive.
Scootaloo shouted in a flash of rage. She was determined to hold on to as much dignity as she could.
Alright, sheesh. Hey, Patches. Doctor her up before we head out. I don't want any blood on damn sheets. And I just washed that thing. You are the two in the cot.
Orion and Scootaloo hopped into the carriage and got as comfortable as they could on the hard seats. Made sure to leave room for Aurora as soon as the third of the large ponies finished bandaging her wings. Aurora carefully stepped into the vehicle and lay down on the bench at the back. Scootaloo inched closer to her and leaned down to talk as the door to the carriage slammed shut. The boss pony was inside the back, standing by the door, watching each of them.
So,
Scootaloo began quietly, trying not to speak too loud.
Aurora, I'm Scootaloo. Sorry we had to meet like this. Any meeting of a friend is a welcome meeting.
Aurora spoke gently with sincerity in her eyes.
We did our best. That's all we can say. That's all any of us can say.
Who's to say that in the city of the deported is,
Who's to say the city of the deported isn't a good one anyways?
the thought struck Scootaloo as she considered it. No one was ever told about where the Pegasi were brought. Most ponies considered it to be some odd land, like where the zebras hailed from, that made Scootaloo realize something even more profound.
Hey, if we're where we're taking is where Sakura's from, then there's gotta be a way to get back. It's not like we're banned from Equestria. Fluttershy, an old friend of mine, she used to pay us as lives in Ponyville. She never passed flight school. She never took her tests. They've never come and taken her away. Exactly.
Aurora agreed with a nod. Orion overheard and offered his thoughts.
I think the reason we're sent far away is because no pony from Cloudsdale ever wants to admit that someone who failed flight school could come from their city. What a fucking horrible place, now that I think of it. I don't want to go back. Maybe that's why no Pegasus ever comes back. They just don't like Cloudsdale.
You goddamn worthless ponies could hardly call yourself Pegasus. The boss spoke from the door. He was swaying ever so slightly as the carriage was lifted and moved to an unknown location. Useless failures is what you are. No pony comes back from exile, regardless of reason. You can't even pass your goddamn test. You three make me sick. Scootaloo jumped up from her seat, lifted herself into the air with her wings, and dove legs first at Boss.
You shut the hell about us. You have no right to treat others like this.
Boss raised a hoof and backhanded Scootaloo out of the air onto the floor. I can treat you however I want. You hardly classify as ponies to Cloudsdale or any of Equestria for that matter. Now sit the fuck down and shut up until you get to your destination.
Well, we've been taken anyway. It's not like we can tell anyone now. And I'm sure as deliverers, you guys should know.
Orion cautiously reasoned. How'd you find out? We hand this carriage off to the ponies and shoots, and we get a bag full of coins to keep quiet about the whole thing. That's how it's always been for thousands of years. The three fillies huddled together, again, scared of the unknown. They kept quiet as they waited through the unbearable trip, all lost in their own thoughts. Friends, families, loved ones, and pets. All will never see them again, and some will never find out why. An hour passed, and then another. Finally, the uncomfortable quiet was broken by a sudden lurch as the carriage stopped in its flight. Ah, the boss smiled. There's my stop. You parties play nice now. Have fun in whatever hell you're sent to. The carriage door shuffled open and the boss hopped out with a gust of cold wind. It was dark outside with hardly any light to see at all. Skulu stared outside and noticed another figure staring in. It was dressed in a black suit, its tail tied in unnatural black that never occurred in nature. Its face was covered in a dark, loose-fitting mask, concealing its mane. All that was visible were rose-colored eyes staring differently at the three ponies inside. They stopped on Skulu momentarily unrecognizing, but she stared back. A second passed, the dark pony slammed the door shut, and the carriage took off once again.
At least we can talk now.
Aurora whispered in the dark. They had nothing to talk about. But with all great things comes a great responsibility, with Cloudsdale being weather stability. The three desolate fowls blinked their eyes awake, having all resolved to conserve energy for whatever came next, with loud scraping noise. The door shook and then swung wide open. Several more ponies obscured by masks and suits were moving around the area. Skulu blinked against the light from what she was seeing. They were in a cloud building. As her eyes adjusted, she noticed more details. Several of the blackened ponies were rushing around, some holding clipboards, some carrying briefcases and other important-looking items on their backs. The complex was full of machinery and signs. Pipes ran along the ceiling with a loud whir ran in the background, occasionally joined with other industrial sounds such as crashes and alarms. Skulu gasped.
This place, the architecture, it's also familiar. I think we're in a weather factory.
Orion frowned. That can't be right. We were traveling for way too long. We've got to be far away from Equestria now, not to mention the city.
Actually, Skatalo might be right.
Aurora mused.
I know so it's maybe the same amount of time from when we left the Coliseum to the place the carriage driver swapped. That it was from the swap place to here. But I don't know, I'm confused. Maybe that's just a coincidence. Welcome, Muse.
A large and powerful voice commanded. Several suited ponies moved to make way for a deep, dark red Pegasus dressed in a white lab coat.
You degenerates are probably wondering where exactly you are, stupid fillies. You're in Cloudsdale, the Rainbow Factory to be correct. Allow me to show you around. What's going on here? Do you expect us to use us as slaves? Because I'd rather be deported, thanks.
Skulu yelled. Aurora and Aurora got off their seats and stood behind Skulu, nodding in agreement.
Like your failures have a choice. You'll be here for the rest of your lives. Oh, I'm sorry. Where are my manners? I am Dr. Atmosphere. My degree is a medical one. I shall assure you. In case you're picturing some dreadful surgery going on behind the scenes, Strange how so many worthless Pegasi got that idea. No, no, my degree is in engineering. I'm one of the four coats in this facility, and you have all had a tour of the lower factory, no?
Three ponies nodded slowly, unsure of what was going on.
Excellent. Who can tell me where the tour begins?
Orion spoke up. When the spectra comes from upstairs and it's mixed.
Very good. What a pity you're utterly useless to the flock. You could have been a smart one.
Dr. Atmosphere smiled sadistically and patted Orion on the head.
Today we're on the upper floor. Please follow me and don't get too far behind, or one of my helpers will be forced to encourage you.
With that, he winked at the suited ponies. With nods, three of them at the rear end leaned forward and jabbed each of the Pegasi with tasers, shocking them to the ground. Dr. Atmosphere whined in laughter as they all yelped and fell, and continued into a soft chuckle as they all stood up again. Scootaloo blinked more tears from her eyes and shook herself again, trying to lose the tingling in her nerves. She turned and quickly looked at each of the suited ponies, catching each of them in the eye when she could. None of them were the rose-eyed pony from the carriage. Begrudging, she started walking behind the red engineer.
You simply must be careful in this department.
Dr. Atmosphere began in a tone not unlike the many tour guides in the lower floors.
There's plenty of nooks and crannies and vents and vats one could fall into. One must be careful not to hurt themselves. After all, you're all helpless as it is. Any more so, and even we couldn't use you.
He glanced behind himself maliciously as the three fellows frowned in insult. They were walking down a series of halls and vibrating machines, and assembly lines lining the way, occasionally ducking under low-hanging wires, or carefully stepping over steaming pipes. As they walked through, the building became cooler and cooler. All three were watching, sensing, looking for any way out. They couldn't see any.
Now let me tell you a story. Crashed air is where the weather is made. Without our stores of Equestria, would starve, freeze, drown, and generally be a not very happy place. What gives us a special honor, one that can't be tainted by incompetent foes like you. How could the world look up and trust us as the Pegasi like you are flying around running the clouds still lame? No, no, we need to do something with all of you. And then we got a delicious idea. One day over 1,000 years ago. Those were some smart ponies back then, I'll say. You don't find too many of them these days. But I digress. And now through the doors quickly now, before more encouragement is applied.
Dr. Atmosphere opened a heavy-looking door and a cramped corridor and offered a hoof inside. Scootaloo stared up at him and he glanced at a suited pony. Scootaloo and the others walked inside as he laughed again.
Enjoy the rest of your pitiful life.
And with that, he slammed the door closed. They all turned and looked at the big room they had been led to. It was fairly open and empty, almost like a theater room. And in one of the room there were 6 square vats, each one nearly full of individual spectra. Above them was a very peculiar-looking machine. From a central stack, 6 horses broke off and led above each of the individual vats. On top of the stack was a single opening, red with rust despite the rest of the machine to be shiny and clean. Even further above that was a fairly complex-looking object with chains and gears hanging off the beams and pipes loosely. Running even higher than the whole machine was the length of a scaffolding, with doors on either side leading out of the room. Down on the floor, a small collection of defeated and crying ponies sat, chattering quietly.
These seats there, those are from the other flight school across town.
Aurora informed, sounding shocked.
And those other ponies sitting over there, see? I remember a trip we went on once with Levitating Acres Private School. I remember them from that trip.
So this is where all the failures go. Not deported, but forced to work forever. Orion sobbed quietly, in exchanging for helping someone he had doomed himself and his good friend to a life of servitude. Scootaloo reached an assuring wing over and lifted his chin. She smiled at him, understanding his depression.
At least we don't have to go through it alone.
She cooed softly. Suddenly there was commotion. A group of ex-students. One pony was unidentified. School took off. Head towards one of the doors on the scaffold immediately. Two suited ponies launched a record speed and both clipped the fly away with their tasers. The pony spasmed in the air and then dropped like a stone. An audible crack as he landed, and a violent burst of twitching. All the other ponies walked back, staring horrified at their friend. They watched hopefully for a long time. He didn't move. Some of them cried softly. Most others turned away, too far confused to feel any more emotions.
I guess that option's out.
Roar said to no one in particular. But you can't fly right now anyway. Orion questioned. That medic guy, Patches or whatever he was called, he popped my wings back and... Wait. Oh, Orion questioned.
That manic guy, Patches or whatever he was called, he popped my wings bang into their joints and banged up where my skin tore. I won't be in winning any races, but I can fly again.
Anyways, they slowly walked forwards and joined a group of ponies, looking at each other with understanding sorrow.
I've fried attention to you inept mules.
One of the suited ponies shouted. At the previous display, no one challenged that order, and stared at the scaffolding, just as one of the doors opened.
How you ask?
Are they up to the task? How you ask? Are they up to the task? To which the answer is a simple facility. A few official-looking Pegasi walked in on the scaffolding and turned to look down at the group with disgust. One of them stood onto a small podium set up in the center and began speaking loudly and clearly.
By now, you've clearly determined that you're not going to exile. There is no deportation. There never was. You are in the factory. You'll never leave the factory. And while you may be called useless, that's not entirely true. You're worthless to the flock as a pony, but you still have a purpose. Purpose to all ponies in this land, far and wide. You get to help us make rainbows. Beautiful, magical rainbows. Doesn't that excite you?
The mysterious announcer grinned ecstatically, taking in all the disgusted looks from the local fowl on the floor below him.
I thought so.
He chuckled.
Isn't it just such an honor, you know? It leaves everybody entrusted with the task speechless too. Now, do we have any volunteers?
Again, every pony fellow glared with hate. One brave pony, a light pink one from Levitating Acres, walked forward a few steps and then yelled,
How could you ever get away with this? How could Slushy or even Luna know about this and tolerate its slavery, torture?
I think you'll find it's more than that. A second official pony walked out of the shadows and up to the podium. The pony was in a suit and mask. First pony walked off the podium and allowed the second to talk. Hulu noticed that it was the rose pony from before. She watched more intensely now. The voice was familiar. 1,000 years ago, when Celestia banished Luna and Equestria and sent her to the moon, she was charged with three things. She was originally in charge of visiting the sun and showing the land with rainbows. But with the moon being an additional task, she had to hand down responsibility for rainbows. Celestia entrusted the Pegasi Cloudsdale to make the rainbows for her from then on. For the first dozen years, we were given a powerful unicorns to help create Spectra. Spectra is pure pigment, pure color, and everything's full of spectra. But you can't just harvest it. You can never separate color from an object. So it was made artificially with magic. The Max pony never took her eyes off the brave pink one. That is until our top engineers made a breakthrough and discovered an ingenious way to extract pigment. And it was so beautiful, even a simple machine could do it. But it couldn't be done with just anything. The conditions had to be right. What did those horrible people do? The pink Pegasus screamed, growing in anger by every minute. The mysterious pony whipped off her mask, unveiling more than her rose eyes. Her skin was a light cyan, and her mane was a gorgeous rainbow. Several of the filling scabs. Scootaloo's knees weakened as it hit her. It was Rainbow Dash. Scootaloo's thoughts raced through her mind, and the room started spinning. It couldn't be. An evil twin, maybe. Perhaps some neglected sister. Rainbow Dash couldn't be this evil. She was her friend, her mentor, her only family. Even if not by blood. How? How was all she could think. It had to be living ponies. Only in ponies where magic and spectra ran freely together. Rainbow Dash threw her head back and laughed maniacally. Only then could the spectra be separated. And it was such a beautiful idea, such a wonderfully horrible idea. And it was so well. We could create exponentially more rainbows of better quality than with real spectra. And it finally gave us a way to prevent Cloudsdale from being tainted by all those horrible Pegasus, which couldn't fly. Scootaloo couldn't take it while all the other ponies were screaming their disgust and fear, running and screaming for where they came, backing off as the pseudoponies surrounded them and herded them back into the center of the floor. Scootaloo couldn't take anymore. I thought you loved me! She wailed, cutting Rainbow Dash's laughter short. Huh. She turned and noticed Amber Orange Pegasus. I thought you loved me. How could you do this to me? I thought you cared for me. Oh, wait. Oh, wait, wrong place. I thought you loved me. How could you do this to me? I thought you cared for me. After all the help, all my life, you treated me as a little sister. And I treated you like a big sister. You're my big sister to me, and you were the only female I ever had. And you knew it. Tears were pouring down her face now, obscuring her vision again. Her throat hurt from the crying and shouting, but she couldn't stop. After everything, you're just gonna let me die? I tried so hard for you. She stared at the floor for a moment. Everyone was silent. Then Scootaloo looked up slowly while she couldn't see the sadness in her eyes. She looked straight at Rainbow Dash, straight into those rosy eyes, past them, and deep into Rainbow Dash herself. I thought you loved me. Rainbow Dash returned a look. Her eyes revealed no emotion, no love, no care. Only apathy. Slowly, however, they glared at Scootaloo. Pure seething hate erupted from Rainbow Dash's mouth as she screamed in return. I did love you. I tried so hard. I taught you everything I knew in hopes that you would pass your test. You You had it in you, kid. I knew what they did here. Ever since I performed that Sonic Rainbow Boom, and they approached me, they wanted to find more ways to make Spectrum. They thought that if I was capable of making rainbows, I could help them make its components as well. They couldn't. But I learned a lot about this place. I'm the manager here now. You know, I worked my way up in secret, pretending to only be simple weather control. How do you think I could afford that massive house over Ponyville? How do you? She trailed on, shaking her head, remembering her anger suddenly. I tried, alright. It was up to you to save yourself. You didn't just fail yourself. You didn't just fail Cloudsdale. You failed me. That's the worst thing you could have done. You aren't just dead to Cloudsdale now. You're dead to me. The room tilted as Skulu tried to comprehend what she was told. Her mind broke as she was totally unable to focus on anything. She stumbled slightly until Orion held open a wing. She clung to it for stability. Rainbow Dash noticed and yelled with mere fury. You can't have happiness. You ruined me. Now I'll ruin you. Workers, the brown one here. Him first.
No!
Skulu, Aurora, and Orion all jumped. Suited ponies cornered Orion, pushing the other two to the side. He tried to leap out of the way to run, but one of the stallions spun around and kicked him. Both connected to his shoulder. Orion collapsed with a shout.
Get back!
More suits yelled at Aurora and Skulu as they dragged the whimpering Orion to the front of the room. The giant machine on the back started humming to life, and the assembly of chains lifted off the top and moved towards the floor. Everyone noticed they were shackles now. The suits collapsed Orion into them. Braving to look up, he turned to Skulu.
Don't worry, Scoots. I love. Goodbye. Goodbye, Orion.
Skulu gasped.
I love you too.
With that, the chains pulled tight and lifted the brown pixels all the way up to the gears. The chains grew taut and stretched each of Orion's limbs straight up and down.
We find
The machines work better if the ribs are broken. Rainbow Dash explained apathetically as the chain spun around in opposite directions, twisting Orion. His screams almost covered the echoing pops and shattering noises. One or two jagged bones tore through his side, and his yells faded to a slow, quiet rattle of breath. The chains untwisted and shackles opened, dropping Shattered Pony into a single opening. Skulu watched in horror, her brain overcome with what was happening, detached from all emotion. She noticed that the top machine wasn't rusty. It was blood. Blood just like what was being tossed up from the mangled remains of Orion. And as Ruffus's body was swallowed into the great machine, finishing with one lone hoof, directed straight up, and then nothing was left. As the horses over the green and red vats of Spectrum started spewing with their brilliant colors, Skulu's vision started to fade. The last thing she noticed was Aurora's concerned, broken voice saying her name as Skulu flopped to the side. In the Rainbow Factory, where your fears and horrors come true. In a Rainbow Factory, where not a single soul gets through.
Skulu, get up. Now, hurry, Skulu, wake up.
Skulu shook her head briefly, wondering where she was and what was happening. In a flash, it all came back, and she too jumped to her feet. Aurora was shaking, fright encasing her fate. The suits were starting to approach the two now, tasers and shackles up ready.
Skulu, they're coming for us. What do we do?
Skulu looked for an opening. All doors were blocked, except for one. On the scaffolding, the suited ponies were slowly approaching, not rushing in order to prevent the fillies from freaking out. Fear was their tool. Scootaloo spun around, looking for an exit. There was one, she realized.
I have a plan.
He whispered to Aurora.
What's that? Clear, fly, fall, complete.
Aurora nodded, understanding. Her eyes widening. She repeated louder now, so that the other frightening fillies could hear.
Clear, fly, fall, complete. Got it? 1,
Scootaloo started counting.
2,
Aurora squeaked as she backed into Scootaloo. Suits were massive feet away now.
3.
A collective shout reverberated from the room as every filly that could actually fly took off. The pseudo ponies scamps and fell back, unsure where to go. There was too much confusion. A few of the faster thinking ones took off as well, tasers at the ready, aiming at the closest Pegasus they could take. Step 1, Scootaloo screamed.
Oh wait, step 1.
Scootaloo screamed.
Clear.
With her command, the failures started targeting the dark ponies in droves. Hooves connected with their heads, and while some of the students fell lifeless to the floor, the majority of the casualties were the pseudo ponies. Scootaloo and Aurora landed on the scaffolding right by the door and reached to open it. It was locked.
My God, what do we do now?
Aurora cried.
We're still unclear.
She shouted, turning around and bucking the door. Aurora followed her, focused on the brunt for blows. On a part of the wall where the latch would be, Rainbow dashed on the other side of the scaffolding, recovered from the initial shock of the rebellion, and noticed Scootaloo pounding on the door. Kill her! She screamed at the other important-looking ponies. Kill her! She started to gallop towards the fillies, forgetting her wings momentarily. Scootaloo closed her eyes, pounding harder and harder on the door. It started to creak and splinter. Any second now, she thought. Rainbow Dash will get here. It's over. I'm doomed. She would have cried, but there was no more tears left. But nothing came. The door started to split from its frame, now leaning inward. It wouldn't be long until it was open. She opened her clenched eyes, peeking up at scaffolding. All the remaining ponies were there, pressing each together, holding the enraged blue Pegasus in her crony's back. They wouldn't last long, however. Even as Scootaloo watched, twitching and yelping ponies were falling to the floor below. Some even landing in the great maw of the Spectrum machine. The pink pony from Levitating Acres was there. She turned to Scootaloo and Aurora, just as the door flew back from the hall behind.
Yeah.
Pink pony demanded from pain in her voice. She opened her mouth to speak again, but was cut short as the pile of Pegasus blew apart. With Rainbow Dash standing enraged in the opening, she was on her 2 back hooves, her front 2 roaring in the air. A small gash down her side leaking red, and her multicolored mane was torn in a patch. An unearthly howl pressed her lips as her rose eyes were drained of any sanity that was left.
Come on, Aurora.
Scootaloo pleaded as she spun around.
We've got to fly if we're going to live. I can't. This is too much. I haven't healed.
Aurora looked at Scootaloo with wide open eyes.
You go, Scootaloo. Tell everyone what happens here. Let them know.
She glanced back at the wall of students, almost bare now as Rainbow Dash's bloodlust tore them to pieces. Her blue coat was now glistening crimson, almost dripping as she ignored the need for live ponies. There would be more. Cloudsdale could take a small shortage of rainbows. In another few months, there would be more classes, more failures. But for now, all she knew in that Scootaloo had to die, violently if possible. Decades of working for a rainbow factory had fractured her. She was the only one who allowed it out in public, and keeping the horrible secret with her since childhood had only led to psychological problems that no amount of therapy could cure. Scootaloo was her last link on sanity, and her failure had deleted that. There was no logic in her mind anymore. No care, no capacity for compassion. Only hate, pure, concentrated in evil hatred filled the gap her love, Scootaloo, had once occupied. Rainbow Dash was no more. Only this monster remained.
I hardly knew you, Aurora.
Skulu cooed softly and Neo paces beside her.
I'm sorry I never knew you until all this. I'm sorry we had to meet like this. I'm sorry we have to part like this.
She sniffled. She had found more tears.
Any meeting of a friend is a welcome meeting.
Aurora reassured Skulu.
Now you've heard the other pony. Fly, Skulu, fly. Goodbye. Goodbye, Aurora.
With that, Skulu levitated and spun around, looked into the yellow pony's eyes one last time, and launched down the cramped corridor. She had no idea where she was going, but any chances at freedom was one she had to take. Aurora blinked a couple of times, standing in front of the door. Rainbow Dash would have at least one obstacle in her way to Skulu. The blue pony tossed the last of the other students over a scaffolding and slowly walked towards Aurora. How cute. You think that you, a useless broken pile of manure, could possibly stand in my way. You really make me laugh. None of you can compete with the awesome power I have.
Love can overcome all evils of this world.
Aurora straightened herself in rebellion as Rainbow Dash stopped in front of her. Aurora stayed in front of Dash, bearing her entreat down the corridor beyond. Well then, bitch, let's see if love will overcome this one. And with this, Rainbow Dash grabbed one of Aurora's bandaged wings and pulled it, tearing it off her completely. Aurora collapsed onto her knees, grinding her teeth in horrible pain, but she didn't scream. She wouldn't give in to Rainbow Dash. Rainbow grabbed her other wing and dragged her, kicking and moaning down to the center of the scaffolding. She lifted Aurora up by the wing, laughing quietly to herself as the look of intense agony appeared on Aurora's face. Rainbow Dash took to the air, bringing the squirmy yellow and green pony with her. Over the top of the machine, with a squeak of evil laughter, she jerked at the wing within her hoof. It too disconnected from the now convulsing Pegasus, and Aurora fell. She landed head first, the door on the scaffolding closed with a gust of wind, as the machine began pumping out the brightest greens and yellows it had ever produced. And there was no one around to see it. Skulu glanced backwards momentarily, her heart pounding. The noise of the constant thump, thump, thump drowned out any other sound in her head. Her eyes throbbing along with it. The corridor was just like the one that led to the theater room, cramped and with dozens of obstacles jutting out at random intervals. Straight behind her, maybe 500 meters now, the bloody mare that used to be Rainbow Dash was cruising along herself. Both Pegasi were completely straight, hooves forward, wings beating at an impossible count, one trying to escape, the other to capture. Skulu looked forward again, focused on what lay ahead of her.
That's all that matters.
She thought.
What's ahead of me, there's no changing what's behind me. Ignore it, focus.
For the second time in many days, a flood of instinct overtook Skulu, and despite the terror she felt in her body, the sorrow that had surrounded her, the evil behind her, her worries melted away, and the thought of flying encased her very being. Down under wires and pipes she ducked, up and around various workers whose complaints and shouts were ignored, only to be repeated momentarily as the raging pony behind collided with them. Her body doing the flying, Skulu's thoughts turned to escape opportunities. She whipped around sharp corners at impossible speeds, zipped up and down countless sets of stairs, trying to shake her murderous tail, but to no avail. She contemplated every nook and cranny she passed, briefly considering hiding. She struck the idea down. As insane as Rainbow Dash may be, she was still too smart to overlook any possible spot Skulu may be. But there ahead of her, Skulu found a solution. A garbage vent of some kind, sticking out from the wall to the floor below. Momentarily, she gave thought to where it may lead. Whether out of the factory or into some incinerator, she couldn't tell. But it was probably worth the risk. She snuck one last glance behind her to make sure the unstable mare was far away enough. Rainbow Dash was paying no attention to any hazard she saw to her prey, tearing through electrical wires and ricocheting off heated pipes, going through any obstacle rather than around it at the same time. But the collisions had slowed down enough to give Scootaloo a chance. She slammed into the sun and over the open vent, hoping for her life.
Oh,
She muttered, closing her eyes and her wings, resisting the urge to start flapping immediately. She counted silently to herself as shadows rushed past her closed eyes, hoping for the best of where this fence led. 1, 2, 3. She opened her eyes and her wings looked up, hovering. Rainbow Dash was above, looking down into the vent. Her eyes were buggy and twitched. Her hooves pounded on the edge of the vent. She was too large to follow. The filly having barely made it herself, but then the anger in her face vanished, only to be replaced with a malicious grin. She started laughing again. A crackle echoing down the vent and reverberating in Scootaloo's mind. Humor! You never did have a good sense of direction. She teased, laughing once again. Scootaloo finally looked down, getting her bearings.
oh no.
She squealed. She was in the theater room again. Only by now was full of suited ponies circling her, their masked faces seeming to be grinning at her as Rainbow Dash shouted orders down the vent.
Don't let her die. I must do it. Subdue her. Catch her.
She winced in chorused victory as the suit shocked Scootaloo with a taser, and as her limp body began to fall from the air, she caught her and brought her to the floor. Scootaloo blacked out momentarily as electricity passed through her, but she came to a line on the cold cloud floor, metal shackles preventing her from moving. She struggled to get free. She could hardly shake the chains lifting her slightly, bringing her small body eye to eye with a Pegasus in front of her. The pony was a deep blood red, glistening in the artificial light of the factory. Her mane had small spots of the glorious colors of the rainbow, but was mostly the same red color as her coat of fur. Chunks of skin were missing from small spots, and her hair was ripped in some places, bald patches of skin in others, and the only clue Scootaloo had as to who this used to be were the rose iris focused on her.
Any final words, you miserable worthless whore of a fowl?
Scootaloo brought her chin high, still demanding even the tiniest fraction of dignity.
You have beautiful eyes.
She cooed, yet cooed soft, yet clearly.